Hi, everybody. I just want to tell you a couple things that went on when we were kids at home. First of all, Carl had a putt putt, and Carol was going to ride it. And so she took off with it and couldn't jump on. And so she started hollering, running around the house and hollering at Carl to pick up the putt putt. And every time they'd go around a corner, she would go around the corner and he couldn't catch up with her. He'd lose ground because he was smaller. And so she finally said, "If you don't get this, I'm going to just drop it where it is." And so, but she kept going round and round the house, and he finally got a chance to catch her before she dropped his putt putt. That's a, that's the first story I'm telling. The next thing I'm going to tell you is about um, us. Cleo was out in the field with Carol, and she had a friend, and I think he did too. And they told the girls they need to step on that gopher hole to kill the gopher. And what they'd done is taken a cow patty and put weeds and stuff over. So when they started stomping, it came up through their toes, and they were not happy with. My last story is Carol and Bill wanted us to go with them to a campground up in the edge of Michigan. And she had rented the trailer and everything, and we were going to stay the weekend. Well, they had a water slide there, and so Carol and I decided we was going down a water slide, and we wanted the guys with us, and they decided, no, they wasn't ready to do that. So we go to the water slide and kept going down it and just had such a blast. So then we come back for lunch and talked the guys into going, and Bill didn't really want to go because he didn't want to take his toupee off. And I said, "Bill, no one knows whether you have a toupee or whether you don't, and we've seen you, and it doesn't matter." So he finally decided he'd go with, and so we're going down the water park or slide, and Norm went first, and then I come down, and I turn around, and here's Carol coming down, mouth wide open, just happy as a lark. And she hit the water, and her teeth fell out. And she put her hand over her mouth, and she said, "Stop the park, stop the water." She was going to lose her teeth. So then Norm goes denture diving for her teeth, found them just right at the screen, ready to go back into the water system. So, and everyone up above was saying, "What happened down there? What happened down there?" We had to go up there and face them because that's the only place there was clean water to clean her teeth and put them in. So we just kind of ignored what they were asking and was laughing at ourselves, and so just went on then.
Carol is my oldest sister and the youngest 5 children in our family. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her growing up teen years. Um, I'll go back to December 15th, 1945, and that's 5 years before, or 5 days before Carol's 16th birthday. And we were going home from town and had an accident, which put both my parents in the hospital and then in a nursing home to recuperate. And so we didn't all get back together again until June of 1946. We got to go home and be together again. My mom come home in a hospital bed, had a cast from her body, from her waist down. And so Carol had to take over the inside household chores. And she started doing the cooking. I'm not sure if she done all of it or if my dad helped. I'm sure he helped when he could. But she also had to do the laundry. And that was a big task because we didn't have inside water. You had to pump all the water by hand and carry it in. and put it in a big dish pan, I think is what we done on the range in the kitchen, and warm it up, and then put it in the washer, and then fill the 2 tubs with cold water for rinse. And then after she went through the washer and the 2 rinses, it was a wringer washer, so she put it through the wringer, put the clothes through the wringer into a basket, and then she had to take them outside and hang them on the line. So that was quite a job. And I don't know if she done any canning by herself or not, but she done everything that had to be done in the house. Plus, she watched Betty and I, and I'm sure she bossed us around a little bit. But anyway, then she would give us a bath every night in a wash tub. It was a round wash tub that was brought into the kitchen, and again, warm the water and give us a bath. And she didn't have a lot of time of her own. And I never remember of her being outside with us at that time. And Betty and I got to go out and play all day. We were young enough. And I'm sure that she wasn't happy about that. You know, she had a lot of work to do at a young age. So, you know, she had a rough time. A lot of things was put onto her that was necessary. There was nobody else to do it. But there's one time I remember her being outside with us, and I don't know if that was after the fact or if it was before all this took place. But it was Carol and Carl and Betty and I, and Carol and Carl had a disagreement, and Betty stuck up for Carl because she said he was right. Well, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was right or what it was about even. But I knew I had to take off running for some reason, and Carol started running right after me. Well, now my legs were shorter than hers, so it didn't take her long to catch up with me. And I don't know if I fell or if she pounced on me, but that was the end of the race anyway. And then I was her buddy. I couldn't be with the other guy. And that is the only thing I remember about her being outside. I was 8 years younger than her, so that was quite a bit. And I was just there, you know, a lot of the time, I think. But I'll miss her. I'll miss seeing her and talking to her. But I plan on seeing her again someday.
Hello, I'm Dennis Wakeman, the son of Carol Wakeman and also her favorite son. And I wanted to share a couple of things about her past, if I may. I want to first say that I've always been amazed at my mother's strong inner toughness. Recently, she and I would talk about the fact that she would not allow fear to be a part of her, which she agreed. Defeat was not a part of her vocabulary nor character, and I know she instilled that in me. If you stay determined and continue to press on, chances are good that you will succeed. She was a very hard worker all of her life, even at a young age, when at the age of 14, she had to take on the responsibilities of her mother, taking care of the household as well as her mother for about 6 months while her mother was recovering from an automobile accident. After high school, she went on to college for 1 year before getting married and raising a family. During my teen years, she decided to finish her college education. And back then, back in the 60s, you didn't have the online option. So she would actually have to drive to the facility and sit in the classes. But she proved that she could successfully get a college degree in accounting while never missing a beat, being a working wife and mother of 4 children. Professionally, I remember that she was always highly respected for her work ethics. and her keen business mind. Uh, I remember I would, at work at Mid-City Supply, I would marvel at watching her fingers fly on the old carriage typewriters at work, all while she was carrying on a conversation, either in person or on the phone. She would get a little perturbed also at some of the lazy co-workers. She was well known for her over-the-top mathematical skills. Stories were told about how she could add columns of numbers, 3 numbers across, in her head before she started school, which was a skill that she used all during her career, whether it was bookkeeping, restaurant managing with my father, or running her own tax consulting business until she retired at the age of 85. When my dad was struggling in school to become a manager of a national restaurant chain while in his early 50s, she dropped everything to travel to him and work intently with him to assure that he would successfully pass his series of exams. I remember him talking about how she would not allow him to fail. After he passed the classes, they ran the restaurant together. He had the title of restaurant manager, but everyone knew that she was the brains and the secret weapon behind their success. Later, while running her own tax consulting business, even in her upper 80s, she would enter baking contests at the local county fair every year and won numerous awards and ribbons each year. I don't know if she ever missed a graduation or a wedding of her kids or her grandkids, regardless of the different part of the country that they were being held, even across the ocean. So I know that she was always liked to enjoy coming to my events, as well as my grandchildren's musical and sporting events. So we will miss her for that. In closing, I would like to say that after her death, we were cleaning out her things and came across a card that she had not sent to me for my birthday, which says, "For a very special son," said Dennis, "on the one day it just isn't enough to celebrate you, son. So I would like you to leave this card out all year long. That way, every time you see it, you'll be reminded how much you're loved and celebrated every day of the year. Have a very happy birthday." Then she wrote, "Have a wonderful 67th birthday. Where did the time go?" The interesting thing is, I'm turning 69. So it was a card that she meant to give me 2 years ago. But with that, I had to say that I was her first child to get a birthday card and also her last child to get a birthday card from her. Thank you.
This is Jenna Wakeman, Dennis Wakeman's wife and Carol Anglemyer's daughter-in-law. I remember my first Christmas dinner with Carol and Bill, Dennis's father, and the amount of food displayed on the table was something I had never seen before. And you never left Carol's table hungry. And I guarantee at the family reunions there was twice the amount of desserts versus the main menus. Carol accepted me into the family as if I were her own daughter, and she accepted my children as if they were her own grandchildren. She always made you feel loved, welcome, and treated everyone the same. No one was ever excluded. The most precious time I got to spend with Carol was in preparation for her and Glenn to move into the assisted living facility. I spent an entire day with her. We were going through clothing and other things and just had a wonderful sharing time together. And we laughed and giggled and just had a great time. It was a precious day I will never forget. I'll miss Carol, or I should say Mom. She was a mother to me, and I loved her dearly.
I think probably most of you has had the opportunity to have mom and dad come and visit you in their homes. They love to travel. Mom loved to travel all over the world if she could. But mainly, I think a lot of her traveling was so she can see her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. Every one of you were so special to her. She loved you dearly. I remember one of the times that her and I got to do a getaway to when we went to Williamsburg, to the historic site. We enjoyed walking down through those towns and, through the streets and riding in the carriage, going to the reenactment and spending time eating and just sitting and enjoying one another. That was very special to me, very enjoyable. I think she enjoyed it too. She was able just to get away from her home and see loved ones and just enjoy. And that is one of the memories that I always cherish.
Hey, so I'm sitting here on the way back from Grandma's memorial this past weekend in my quiet place on the ride back, and just sitting here reflecting on what were some of the special times that myself and my family had with Grandma. And all of us had some of those interactions with Grandma where she came and participated in our lives and our children's lives, whether it was my kids' 4-H activities at the fair, or just sitting in the backyard looking at the goats and launching bottle rockets with us. But I think for me, what I recall the most isn't a single event that took place between myself and Grandma. I think it was just the way we interacted that allowed her and I to enjoy one another. And oddly enough, some of those times, and many of those times, were during the family gatherings where, she was, the stress was at its peak. So, I would go and visit with her in the kitchen, even as everyone's hustling around and trying to prepare dinner or lunch or what have you. And as I observed her in there and communicated with her, you could tell that she was getting flustered, and it was at those times where I would make some type of remark, some type of joke or sarcastic comment to her that let her just step away from the hustle and bustle that was occurring and laugh. And I think it was those times where she could just pause in the moment, take a breather, step back and laugh, that we enjoyed the company of one another the most. And that was just a memory that I had. Yes, we had the time sitting around in the family room and conversing, but I think it was when we had those interactions in the kitchen that was most memorable to me. And evidently, that's what allowed me to be the favorite.
One thing I will always remember and think of when I think of Grandma is her beautiful smile. It always is able to light up a room, even now when I'm going through pictures and I see her smile. It just makes me want to smile. I also think about how much more beautiful her smile is since she is with our Lord and Savior.
One of my favorite things about Grandma is the fire that always seemed to be blazing inside of her. As a young woman, it's often frowned upon to have a strong opinion or to be outspoken. However, Grandma took all of these social norms and just pushed them out of the way. Grandma and I both have very outspoken personalities and oftentimes competitive personalities, so we find ourselves playing cards. One of my fondest memories to come out of playing cards, and one of the best in general, is a memory of us trash talking, going back and forth, saying, "Oh, you better get ready," and I'd tell her, you're gonna go down so hard, and she would just look over at Grandpa and say, "You better get some ice ready," and I'd be like, "Why?" And she would say, "Well, you're going to be a sore loser." So those were really nice. When I let those memories roll around in my head, I'm hit with a lot of different emotions. But one of the biggest emotions that is thrown my way is gratefulness. Grateful for knowing Grandma, and grateful for being a victor of her love.
My mother will always be my inner strength, my driving force, and my voice of reason. As a child, she was my foundation, my protector, my guidance counselor, and my purpose. And she was also my constant reminder of God's never-ending love. So to my mother, you held my hand as a child, but you will hold my heart forever. I love you.
First off, I want to say sorry. I couldn't be up there with you guys. There's so many memories of Grandma. I don't want to nitpick through certain ones. I will say one thing that I will miss is the little random visits that y'all would do. Where you give us like 2 days notice that you were going to be here, and we had to go crazy and get everything in order. And one thing that'll never change, I don't think I'll ever be able to open a can of Crystal salve and not think of Grandma every time I smell that, which happens far more frequently we think in my house with my kids. So I'll smell it quite often. But to Glenn, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for being an amazing husband to Grandma, an amazing grandfather to all of us. You took on a big chunk of family when you married her, and you always treated us just like that, and I can't thank you enough. So our thoughts and prayers are with you. We love you all.
Hi, I am Taylor Foster. I will dearly miss Great Grandma. Even though I didn't get to see her as much as I wanted to, the times I did were amazing. I know her one request from me was to see her great-great-grandson. It upsets me that she didn't get that chance. But God took her home before she got to meet him and before he got to see what an amazing person she was. I will be sure to tell him about her love for her family and how much she was loved. She will forever be in our hearts.
Hi, I am Mackenzie Foster. Although Great Grandma is no longer suffering and she is now in a beautiful place, I love her and miss her with all my heart. I will miss all the times we spent together. And Great Grandpa, I know you will miss her too. She was a loving and caring great grandmother.
Hi, I am Luna Foster. I will also miss Great Grandma. She was an amazing great grandma. I will always remember how much she loved us. And I will miss the fun we had with her when she came down to visit and when we went up to Indiana. I can't wait to see my amazing great grandma again in heaven. I also love you, Great Grandpa, and I know you will miss her.
Hello, this is the Prather family, Shenna, Daryl, Gage, and Aiden, and Sabin. Just wanted to say, remember all the birthday cards that Grandma would send every grandchild, even though there are so many of us. She remembered every year and sent us some cash inside. Love her Spitfire attitude. And I recently was thinking how she would get really tickled about something and would laugh. It was very loud and boisterous and not quite as loud as mine, but I feel like maybe that's where I got my my laugh from. Hey, Gage?
I remember when she came down to my college town down in Gainesville because they were taking a vacation to go and see all the grandchildren and everything. And they came down and bought me a nice dinner and just talked about college and life pretty much. It was nice.
Aiden?
I remember when they would come down to Orange Park and we'd have dinner and talk to each other a bunch.
And we love you, Grandma. And happy birthday, Grandpa Glenn.
One of the earliest memories that I have of my mother is when I was a little girl and sick with the croup or something, so that I had to be in a tent with a hot air humidifier for about 3 days. So since we had bunk beds in our bedroom, my mom built a tent around the bottom bunk, and that's where I stayed. And what I love about this is that she would come into the tent with me sometimes and take my temperature, rub Vicks onto my chest, which I hated. It stung my eyes and made me cry. Or just spend time talking to me, bring me some chicken soup. That was sweet. And I felt really cared for, really loved. And I'm so grateful to have that memory of that time together with her. I don't know why she didn't use McNess mentholated ointment, but I'm quite sure that it was Vicks. Well, it just also came back to me when I was there in the summer of 2019. And when we would be out driving in the car or walking at the mall, there were a few times when she expressed to me her gratitude for Dad, for Grandpa, and the way that he was caring for her when she needed him. So, Dad, I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for loving Mom, and we love you.
I really miss Grandma. And as soon as I heard she was gone, I had a flood of memories that I really didn't expect from a summer in the mid-90s. I was a teenager. I went to stay with her, and it was my job to help her go through this massive basement of stuff. I think Grandpa Wakeman had died and she'd had surgery, and there was all this stuff, a lifetime stuff in the basement. And you can imagine what a summer that would be for me, sifting through that, surfacing artifacts, mementos, awards, magazines with amazing recipes in them, huge quantities of stuff, and of course arguments about what we were and were not going to throw out. Pretty sure I lost most of those arguments, but she made it very clear that I was there to see her. You know, the amount of time I spent with cousins and people my age was very carefully negotiated. And what she wanted to do was just connect. We sat at the dining room table and watched the Braves lose the World Series, I think. And over the years, after I got married and had kids, she would visit, sometimes on very short notice. And that sometimes seemed like a declaration of, I'm Grandma, I'm going to be connected to you. I'm going to see my grandkids. I'm going to say hello. That determination to be Grandma in the middle, I think, is what characterized her so much. Some years I felt like she probably didn't have time to do my taxes, really. But she was determined to do it anyway because they connected to me and who I was. Then there was the wedding to Glenn. Lots of good humor as we walked down the aisle together, but also just a fixation on pulling it off, making sure the details worked, doing it well. And I really admire that about Grandma in lots of ways. She visited us here in Brighton not too long ago. And at that point, she was having difficulty walking, and Brighton is a very hilly city. But the determination was there to get up to our house on the top of the hill and see us to read to the grandkids and the great-grandkids, to walk the town, to see the beach, to go out to eat. It was all there. And I think particularly now that I'm of an age where maybe I'm starting to get a little bit more tired, a little bit earlier in the day, I'm just amazed at the energy she had to pull that off across the breadth of the Wakeman clan. To me, Grandma was the dynamo in the middle.
I was always getting her to read me books. I would come up to her with a book, and whatever she was doing, she'd drop it, and she'd just sit down with me and read for an hour. And now when I go back to those books, I read them with her voice.
When I was about 8 or so, Grandma and Grandpa Wakeman picked up my brother and I and took us to Disney World in Florida. And there's so many memories from that trip. For example, I remember the first night we stayed in a hotel and I saw Grandpa Wakeman without his toupee or his teeth. That's something you don't forget. But there's just one story I wanted to share about Grandma on that trip. And that is when we were at Disney World, I wanted to ride go-karts. And then there was a particular ride I saw, and I wanted to do it. And so we get in line, and we get to the front of the line. It took us a while. And we find out that I'm not allowed to drive the go-kart. I'm too young or too short or too light, I don't remember. But I'm not allowed to drive the go-kart. And I can't even just have an adult as a passenger. An adult has to drive it. So Grandma says, okay, we're still going to do it. She wants me to experience this. And she gets in the driver's seat of the go-kart, and I'm her passenger. And the guy in charge gets us all buckled in and walks away. And then Grandma turns to me and says, okay, Joseph, so I'm going to steer, but you're going to push the accelerator, right? I want you to drive this as much as possible. So you got to keep in mind the go-kart's made for a larger person. And I'm pretty tiny at this age, and the pedals are in front of Grandma, not in front of me. So, the guy says go, and I'm sitting there like straining with everything I've got, trying to get my foot to reach the accelerator over in front of Grandma, which I could barely reach. And beyond that, it's kind of hard to push down. It's not an easy press accelerator. And, the cart goes a little bit and it stops because I can't keep it down. And I'm fighting to push this accelerator. And we're just like spurting and going and stopping and going and stopping. And it's a little frustrating. I'm kind of assuming Grandma's going to be frustrated with me, but she's not. She's just really trying to make sure I'm having as much fun as I possibly can under the circumstances. But there's another issue here. So the go-kart was on a fixed track, right? This is not a free go-kart you can go anywhere you want. It's like on a rail of sorts, right? And there's another kid on the same track, on the same rail. And of course, he's going at full speed. And so he's coming up behind us and slamming into our go-kart just over and over again. And like by the third time he comes up behind us and hits us, Grandma's like, Joseph, take your foot off. Take your foot off the gas. And she makes me stop, and she turns around and gives that poor kid a piece of her mind. It just rips into him for hitting us over and over and being so rude. Tells him to back up and let us drive, and so we go off again, but it's no better. I mean, I'm just not getting it. I can't keep the accelerator down. I can't reach. My legs aren't long enough. I'm not strong enough, and I'm embarrassed. I want to just crawl into a hole at that point. And here comes the kid again, right? And he comes up and just slams us hard, like full-on whiplash effect. And Grandma's like, Joseph, stop. And this time she just folds her arms and says, we're not going to move. And I just assume it's all my fault. I mean, it is, right? I can't drive the thing. And I feel terrible. And the manager starts walking over. And I'm just going, oh, no, oh, no. And so he comes over and says, man, what's the problem? And not only does she tell him about the troublesome kid behind us and all the problems that he's causing, slamming into us, and how rude he's being, but she proceeds to tell him that he gave us a defective go-kart, and that the go-kart wouldn't drive very fast or very smoothly, and it was sputtering because of a problem with the go-kart, which, I don't know, was pretty funny now that I think about it today. But I guess here's the takeaway for me anyway. Grandma could be feisty, right? We know that. She could be sometimes stubborn, we can say. But I tell you, when she is in your corner, or was in your corner fighting for you, that was a pretty cool thing. She could be a pretty cool ally.
I remember Grandma Anglemyer had lots of toys that we loved to play with, and one of them was a wooden marble thing where you stick in marbles at the top and they go in a zigzag down at the bottom. We'd play that for hours, and I'm not exaggerating.
And do you remember the horribly out of tune piano that she had? Though, even though it was so bad, she still loved to hear us play.
One of my favorite memories of Grandma Anglemyer is actually a recent one, when Grandma and Grandpa Anglemyer and Mom drove to Illinois. This would have been fall of 2018, so a little over 2 years ago. And we all went to Topgolf driving range. And I remember when we were going thinking, this might not be the best idea, because
Grandma couldn't walk unassisted at the time, and she had to have her walker. But they have soft seating at Top Golf where you can sit and be part of the group and watch as people swung at golf balls. But that was not enough for her. She was very determined, as she oftentimes is, to swing a club and connect with some golf balls. And so what we did is she stood where you would stand to swing, and Grandpa stood to her left a little bit with his hands out ready to catch her if she like over swings and falls or something. And I'm standing to her right a little bit ready to do the same thing. And she swings, beautiful swing, connects with the ball the very first time, sends it in the center of one of the targets, and had one of the highest scores of the evening. It was hilarious. Sat back down and just thoroughly enjoyed the rest of her time watching other people drive golf balls at the driving range. And that really was typical of Grandma. She was very determined to be part of the action and to enjoy her time with family and not let anything get in her way of doing that. It's one of my favorite things about her.
I met Grandma in 2015 at Christmas time, and 15 days later, in 2016, Grandma sent me a birthday card, even though I wasn't one of her grandchildren yet. I was only dating Samuel at the time. She didn't spell my name right. But the fact that she remembered me and wanted to thank me for coming out there to visit her was just so thoughtful and caring. And from that point on, our relationship grew to her being my professional taste tester in the kitchen, my partner in crime in Girls Against Guy table games, singing hymns together, whether singing good or bad, around the piano and on the old porch swing, and exercising in the living room with Grandpa. These were all of the activities we loved to do together. Oh, and we liked to cuddle. At least I did, even if she didn't like it. I think in the long run, she ended up liking it. But she was my best friend, and I'm so proud to be able to call her Grandma, and I will miss her very, very deeply.
I never got to know Grandma really well. I just have a handful of memories with her, like when she sent Mercy and I these little dresses she had made for our American Girl dolls one Christmas, and how special that was to us. Or last year, Grandpa and Grandma served us this 7-year-old bundt cake that Grandma had made back in 2012, and they had just defrosted it for us. And I was shocked that it still tasted amazing. It tasted really good. Or like the last time I saw Grandma was when we went to go visit her and take this 4-generation picture with my mom and Mirabelle. And so Grandma and my mom were sitting in front, and I was standing in the back with Mirabelle, and Mirabelle kept grabbing my mom's hair and Grandma's wig. And Grandma would just cling to her wig with both hands so that Mirabelle wouldn't take it all the way off. And I remember she was such a good sport. She just would laugh and laugh. I don't have any big story, big event that happened with Grandma. I just have a lot of little memories. And it was so clear to me all throughout the years that she really loved us because we were her family. And she showed that in the way she would treat us when we go visit her, by sending us cards. And I really loved her as well.
One of my very first childhood memories is when I got to be a flower girl at Grandpa and Grandma's wedding. And I think I was only like 3, so I don't remember much about it. It's quite foggy. But I do remember one thing, and that is how special I felt to be their flower girl. And then almost 20 years later, I was getting married. Ben and I got married in France in 2015, and much to our surprise, Grandpa and Grandma made it to the wedding. We did not expect that to happen, and we were thrilled to have them. That's probably the memory with Grandma that I cherish the most, is that they flew all the way from Indiana for our wedding, for me and Ben, and for Patience and Seth, as it was a double wedding. And I will always cherish that memory, having her there. on our wedding day. And I grew up far away from Grandma, so I don't have very many memories with her. But one thing I do know is that she seems to really care about her family. And she had a lot of grandkids and great-grandkids. But she knew every one of us by name. She cared about every one of us, and she prayed for us. And that's just really precious. And Grandpa, know that we are praying for you. You are the only Grandpa I've ever known, and you are a wonderful, wonderful Grandpa. That's why Ben and I named our little boy Theo, we named him Theo Glenn. And now every time I call Theo Glenn, I think of you, and I think of Grandma. I love you.
Teresa, Victoria, Rebecca, Dennis, and Glenn. I'm so sorry for your loss, but I know she's in a better place. There are no words to express the grief and the hole left in our lives when someone we love moves on without us. I am so grateful to have all of you in my life, again after so many years. It's like there was never a gap. Last year, during the yard garage sale, when Carol decided she should help, I would tell her I was going to take her walker out and sell it if she didn't behave. And she would laugh every time. These are memories that I will keep. I love you all, and thank you for reconnecting with me again after so many years gone by.